Chapter 1. What you put on your fork is the most important thing you do every day. When you wake up in the morning, do you wonder what you should eat that day? Are you sick of being mixed up and confounded by conflicting media reports about the latest research on which foods are good or bad for us? One day, eggs are unhealthy, and the next day, they are a miracle food. One year, the government tells us to eat 6 to 11 servings of carbohydrates, bread, rice, cereals, and pasta, as the foundation of our diet, and the next, it tells us to cut carbs. 25 years ago, the U.S. dietary guidelines informed us that all our health problems were derived from eating fat. It was recommended that we eat fat only sparingly. Then, more than 3 decades later, they suddenly learned fat wasn't so bad for us. We were just recently told in the 2015 U.S. dietary guidelines, don't worry about fat. There's no restriction on how much you can eat because the research shows no connection between obesity or heart disease and dietary fat. And that cholesterol we told you to avoid for fear of dropping dead of a heart attack? Well, that was wrong too, so skip your egg whites and enjoy your whole eggs. Food controls almost everything that matters in our lives. Food connects us to one another and to our bodies. It can reinvigorate our health and bring families together. All of this is enough to make you give up and just eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and in whatever quantities you want. It feels like a nutrition whiplash. This is the reason Dr. Mark Hyman has written this book. He wants to help you undo all the beliefs about food that are making you fat and sick and replace them with a new understanding that will lead to health and longevity. Dr. Mark believes that cultivating and consuming real, whole food is the answer to many of our world's problems. How we grow it, produce it, and eat it affects almost every aspect of our lives and our society. Food, WTF Should I Eat, is an honest how-to guide and designed to answer the question, WTF should I eat? Did you know? The economic toll of obesity is now costing the UK economy around £27 billion a year. Type 2 diabetes alone, linked to obesity but also affecting up to a third of those with a normal body mass index, suggesting we are all vulnerable to a diet-related disease, has a combined cost to the NHS and economy of a staggering £20 billion a year. Chapter 2. Most Americans eat factory-made, industrially produced food-like substances that contain anti-nutrients. Chronic disease affects half of all Americans. Among the culprits are dementia, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, neurological problems, depression, attention deficit disorder, autoimmune disease, allergies, reflux, irritable bowel, thyroid disorders, hormonal and menstrual problems, and skin problems including eczema, psoriasis, and acne. Food is the most powerful drug on the planet. It can improve the expression of thousands of genes in the body. Did you know that food can cure depression, diabetes, arthritis, autoimmune disease, headaches, fatigue, and insomnia? That it can prevent and reverse dementia and heart disease or 100 other common diseases and symptoms? This is the biggest scientific discovery since the germ theory of disease in the mid-1800s and the development of antibiotics in the 1920s. Food is medicine. Food is the most powerful drug on the planet. As director of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine and the Ultra Wellness Center and chairman of the board of the Institute for Functional Medicine, Dr. Mark has treated more than 10,000 patients using food as the main drug, and its benefits far exceed those of any prescription he has written. An avocado doesn't have an ingredient list or a nutrition facts label. Neither does a steak. They are just food. Most Americans don't eat food anymore. They eat factory-made, industrially produced food-like substances, or frankenfoods that contain trans fat, high-fructose corn syrup, monosodium glutamate or MSG, artificial sweeteners and colors, additives, preservatives, pesticides, antibiotics, new-to-nature proteins, and heightened allergens caused by genetic breeding and engineering. These are anti-nutrients. For example, this food item has 37 ingredients. Read them and then see if you can guess what it is. Ingredients: enriched bleached wheat flour, flour, reduced iron, B vitamins, niacin, thiamine monotrate, B1, riboflavin, B2, folic acid, corn syrup, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, water, partially hydrogenated vegetable and or animal shortening, soybean, cottonseed and or canola rapeseed oil, beef fat, whole eggs, dextrose, contains 2% or less of modified cornstarch, glucose, leavenings, sodium acid pyrophosphate, baking soda, monocalcium phosphate, sweet dairy whey, soy protein isolate, calcium and sodium caseinate, salt, mono and diglycerides, polysorbate 60, soy lecithin, soy flour, cornstarch, cellulose gum, sodium stearoyl lactylate, natural and artificial flavors, sorbic acid to retain freshness, yellow 5, red 40. Of course, you can't tell because it is not real food. It is a food-like substance. In fact, it is Twinkies. Did you know food can cure most chronic diseases? It works faster, better, and cheaper than any drug ever discovered. And the only side effects are good ones: prevention, reversal, and even treatment of disease, not to mention vibrant optimal health. Chapter 3. Key food categories and reasons why you should eat them. Nutrition experts usually warn us to avoid certain foods and embrace certain others if we want to be healthy. But often, we can't agree on which is which, and their wisdom always seems to be changing. This chapter and the next two cuts through the confusion. Meat. Eating meat will clog your arteries, cause cancer and type 2 diabetes, and take years off your life, right? Absolutely not. But you could be excused for believing that. A lot of people do. Meat lovers and abstainers alike. This food that we've eaten all our lives has become the most controversial thing on our plates. When you think of meat, you probably think of protein, but protein exists in virtually every food. Even vegetables contain it in small amounts, but they lack a number of critical amino acids. Eggs are another source of protein, containing 6 grams each, but the average adult needs between 60 and 90 grams of protein each day, and even more if you're active. You need about 30 grams 3 times a day to maintain and build muscle. Meat is the single best source of protein, and also many vitamins and minerals. Meat contains minerals such as zinc, selenium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. And it also contains iron, which is particularly important for women, a great many of whom are anemic due to menstruation. Poultry and eggs. Beef may have been what's for dinner decades ago, but the federal government's dietary guidelines changed all that with the demonizing of saturated fat. But unfortunately, the USDA's misguided advice unintentionally created an increased demand for poultry that radically transformed the chickens we eat, and not for the better. When chickens forage and eat insects, it dramatically increases the quality and amount of nutrients in their eggs. The dietary guidelines that told us to avoid fat and replace it with bread and pasta also told us that egg yolks would raise our cholesterol and give us heart attacks. That advice led generations of Americans to trade in their scrambled eggs and sausages for egg white omelets and potatoes. But those recommendations were wrong. Neither the chicken or the egg deserved their bad reputations. Did you know, many people still ask, is it okay to eat the yolks? And the answer is a resounding yes. Eat the whole egg as Mother Nature intended. Chapter 4. Eating seafood is a wise idea. It helped our ancestors develop larger brains. The notion that fish is brain food is not just an old wives' tale. Our brains are more than half fat, and even developing fetuses need the omega-3 fats found in fish. In addition to benefiting our brains, nervous systems, hearts, and cardiovascular systems, 4 large studies have found that omega-3 fats also protect against type 2 diabetes, inflammation, autoimmune disease, and even depression. But fish are almost too nutritious for their own good. Global demand has grown so rapidly that we're depleting the oceans, turning fish into an unsustainable practice. As a result, countries across the globe are increasingly relying on factory-farmed fish operations. This brings a whole new set of health and environmental challenges to the dinner table. Aquaculture production has nearly tripled in the last 2 decades, bringing with it a significant increase in the use of antibiotics to quell diseases and infections that run rampant in overcrowded factory fish farms. Wild-caught sardines are great sources of calcium, omega-3 fats, and choline needed for a healthy brain and liver. Eating wild fish is best, but even then, you're not entirely in the clear because there is still the very real problem of pollution. The coal and gas industries have spent decades dumping mercury and other contaminants into our oceans and rivers. And although we can't see these chemicals, they're absorbed by fish and then by those who eat them. Vegetables. You know you have to eat your veggies. You've heard it 1,000 times. But here's a good question. Why should you eat your veggies? After all, plants don't contain all the vitamins and minerals that you need to be healthy, and in some cases, they provide surprisingly little. Beef liver has several times more vitamin A than any plant, including carrots, which, though noted for that particular nutrient, actually only contain beta-carotene, which has to be converted by the body into vitamin A. Oranges might come to mind when you think of vitamin C, but can you also get that from organ meats? Seafood is the best source of the essential omega-3 fatty acids that you need to survive and thrive. You can't get them from veggies, except algae and purslane. Vegans must supplement with vitamin B12 to avoid becoming deficient. Vegetables contain carbs, a source of energy. In fact, the majority of your diet should be carbs, not bread, potatoes, sugar, beans, or grains, but vegetables. Veggies don't spike blood sugar, except the starchy ones, and they're critical for health. But it's worth noting that carbs are not a nutritional necessity. We do not need any carbs for our survival. Nonetheless, we need vegetables because they contain many vitamins, minerals, and powerful disease-fighting, health-promoting compounds called phytonutrients. Did you know? Without eating meat or fish, you are more likely to end up with nutritional deficiencies of iron, calcium, vitamin K, omega-3 fats, B12, and fat-soluble vitamins such as A and D. Chapter 5. Why should I eat my fruits and veggies? You've probably been told to eat your fruits and veggies ever since you were a kid. But this advice gives the false impression that fruits and vegetables should occupy equal space in your diet. It's easy to see why most people would welcome that conclusion. Fruit is by far the sweeter of the two and more convenient. Fruit's sugary profile is also its main drawback. Some varieties are sweet enough to be a disaster for people with weight or blood sugar issues. Roughly 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. 1 in 115 million are either diabetic or pre-diabetic, so a lot of us need to go easy on our fruit intake. Orange juice is almost pure sugar, lacks some key nutrients, and has been linked to weight gain and diabetes. Some studies show that fruit consumers have a lower incidence of type 2 diabetes. The government's dietary recommendations, which tell us to eat between 5 and 9 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, are too vague and misleading. You're better off eating a minimum of 10 servings of plant foods each day, 7 or 8 servings of veggies, and no more than 2 or 3 servings of fruit. Fats and oils. Fat is confusing. So many different kinds of fat. Some, we are told, are good, some bad. What's true? And then there's the word fat. We all were taught that eating dietary fat leads to the accumulation of body fat. That fat that passes through your lips ends up on your hips. Eating fat doesn't make you fat. Eating fat doesn't cause heart attacks. The lie that dietary fat is public health enemy number 1 was built on 3 bad ideas. The first is that body fat and dietary fats are one and the same, and that the fat we eat becomes fat in our bodies. The second was a simplistic view of human metabolism and weight gain, that a calorie is a calorie, which the experts drilled into our heads. The thinking went like this. A gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories, and a gram of fat has 9 calories, so eating lots of carbs and reducing fats will keep you lean. That is dead wrong. In fact, a 2012 Harvard study found that a very high-fat diet, compared to a very low-fat diet, speeds up metabolism by 300 calories a day. Eating fat speeds up your metabolism and helps you lose weight. That turns conventional wisdom on its head. Did you know? Naturally occurring fats in our whole foods aren't the problem. Refined, processed fats and oils that are added to our food by the industry are. Chapter 6. Foods, the ones to eat and the ones to avoid for good health. Meat, WTF should I eat? Grass-fed beef, grass-fed lamb, pasture-raised pork, bison, venison, elk. Meat, WTF should I avoid? Conventionally raised beef, lamb, or pork. Do your best. Deli ham and other processed meats. Hot dogs, if not 100% beef or pork. Conventional sausage. Conventionally made bacon. Conventionally made salami. Poultry, WTF should I eat? Organic or pasture-raised whole chicken. Organic or pasture-raised turkey or duck. Pasture-raised organic or omega-3 whole eggs. Poultry, WTF should I avoid? Conventionally raised chicken, turkey, or duck. All processed poultry. Eggs from conventionally raised poultry. Egg whites. Dairy. WTF should I eat? Grass-fed whole milk in very small amounts. A splash in your coffee is okay. Ideally, use goat's milk. Grass-fed, full-fat, unsweetened yogurt that contains milk and live cultures, and nothing else. Ideally, use goat or sheep yogurt. Kefir, fermented cow's milk, following the same rules as for yogurt. Whole milk, grass-fed cheese made with no additives. Dairy, WTF should I avoid? Dairy from conventionally raised cows. Skim, 1% or 2% milk. Low-fat or non-fat yogurt. Yogurt that contains fruit, sweetener, additives, or anything extra. Cheese made from skim milk or reduced fat milk. Seafood, WTF should I eat? Wild salmon, either canned or fresh, or salmon labeled Alaskan, since all salmon from Alaska is wild. Small, toxin-free fish. Smaller the better, such as sardines, anchovies, herring, and mackerel. Clams, scallops, mussels, and oysters, which are loaded with beneficial zinc. Seafood, WTF should I avoid? Big fish such as shark, swordfish, Chilean sea bass, king mackerel, and marlin. Grouper, halibut, tilefish, and orange roughy. Most farmed fish, with rare exceptions. Tuna, sushi, imported prawns. Veggies, WTF should I eat? Broccoli, kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and other members of the cruciferous family. Dark leafy greens, spinach, Swiss chard, and spring greens, also a crucifer. Alliums such as garlic, shallots, leeks, and onions. High-fiber veggies like celery, leeks, and asparagus. Shiitake, oyster, and chestnut mushrooms. Radishes, turnip greens, and beetroot greens. Veggies, WTF should I avoid? Iceberg lettuce, white potatoes, raw white button mushrooms, alfalfa sprouts, most supermarket tomatoes, peppers, aubergines, and other nightshades if you have arthritis or inflammation. Vegetables with a high glycemic load. Fruit, WTF should I eat? Wild, organic, fresh berries, cherries, blackberries, and raspberries. Frozen organic berries, either thawed or in shakes or frozen desserts. Organic stone fruit like plums, peaches, nectarines, apricots, cherries. Organic pears. Organic oranges, grapefruits, tangerines, and other citrus fruits. Pomegranates, kiwis, and papayas. Fruit, WTF should I avoid, or at least go easy on? Grapes, mangoes, and melons are delicious and easy to overeat, but because they're sugary, eat in small quantities only. Bananas are quite starchy and high in sugar. Dried fruits like figs, dates, raisins, and currants are highest in sugar, and they sometimes contain added sugar or the preservative sulfate. Pineapples are a good source of an enzyme called bromelain, which helps alleviate inflammation and improve joint health, but they are very high in sugar. Have no more than 80 grams a day. Fats and oils, WTF should I eat? Organic avocado oil. Butter from pastured, grass-fed cows or goats. Grass-fed ghee, clarified butter. Organic virgin coconut oil. Organic humanely raised tallow, beef dripping. Organic humanely raised lard, or pork fat. Fats and oils, WTF should I avoid? Soybean oil, canola rapeseed oil, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, palm oil, peanut or ground nut oil, vegetable oil. Did you know? Fiber keeps digested food moving smoothly through your system, prevents cancer and heart disease, and helps you lose weight. Chapter 7. Potentially dangerous substances to keep out of your food to stay healthy. The list of potentially dangerous substances is long, but these items are easy to steer clear of once we know what to look for. Unhealthy processed foods. Cooking is a form of processing. We just have to understand which processed foods we can safely eat, and which ones are, in fact, to be avoided, such as foods with these ingredients. Anything with ingredients that are difficult to pronounce. Anything that didn't exist in your grandmother's day, maybe even your great-grandmother's day, depending on how old you are. Anything containing soybean oil. Anything containing high fructose corn syrup. Anything with the word hydrogenated in its name. Anything advertised on TV. Anything with monosodium glutamate, MSG. Avoid any food with more than 5 ingredients on the label unless they are all things you recognize, such as tomatoes, water, basil, oregano, or salt. Pesticides and herbicides. Conventionally grown produce is treated with toxic chemicals designed to kill insects and other pests. These chemicals have been linked to cancers, Parkinson's disease, autism, and many other ailments. If you want to eat any of the foods listed in the top 20, choose organic. Strawberries, apples, nectarines, peaches, celery, grapes, cherries, spinach, tomatoes, red, orange, yellow, and green peppers, cherry tomatoes, and cucumbers. There's a dead zone the size of New Jersey in the Gulf of Mexico because fertilizer runoff has led to an overgrowth of algae that monopolizes the water's dissolved oxygen supply. Genetically modified organisms. There's conflicting evidence on this one. Some scientists say GMOs are safe and necessary if we're going to feed all the world's inhabitants and protect the environment. But that propaganda may not be true. There are a lot of gray areas when it comes to GMO. It is best to avoid industrial food and eat organic as often as possible. That is better for your health and solves the GMO problem. Antibiotics. Excessive use of antibiotics in animals disrupts the microbiome of man and beast, causing inflammation, weight gain, and illness. Antibiotics promote the growth of superbugs, dangerous, drug-resistant microbes that make us sick and can even kill us because we can't kill them. They are resistant to all current antibiotics. Non-medical use of antibiotics should be banned, and only the political power of big agriculture prevents this from happening. Did you know? Nitrates and nitrites used to color, preserve, and flavor processed meats like bacon, hot dogs, and salami is a probable carcinogen according to the World Health Organization. Chapter 8. Add the following to your diet to make it more delicious and nutritious. There are plenty of little touches we can add to our food to make it more delicious, and if we choose right, they can also make meals more nutritious. Spices, herbs, and other condiments. Here's a partial list of the ones you should keep handy in the kitchen, ready for every meal. Basil, good for heart, antioxidant, antibacterial. Black pepper, helps the absorption of nutrients. Cayenne and all hot peppers, boosts metabolism, increases circulation. Cinnamon, improves circulation, antimicrobial. Cloves, anti-cancer properties. Coriander seeds and leaves. Ginger. When spices and herbs are dried, their potency often increases. Infused in oil and used in cooking, they retain their powers. Salt. Sodium is important for overall health, but our sodium level needs to be in proportion to our levels of other important minerals, mainly potassium. When the ratio of sodium to potassium in our bodies gets out of whack, high blood pressure follows. So we need optimal amounts of both to stay healthy. Sodium is naturally found in whole foods, and as with any other food or mineral, it's best in its purest form. Look for these foods that are rich in natural sodium to get your recommended daily allowance of about 2,300 milligrams. Meat, beetroot, carrots, celery, chard, seaweed, beans. Condiments, dressings, vinegars, and sauces. There are literally thousands of items that fall into this category, and if you read the ingredients, you'll see that most brands contain ingredients we should be avoiding. Unhealthy oils, added sugars, additives, preservatives, and weird chemicals with long names that are added to flavor or color or thicken. Ketchup, buy organic with as little sugar as possible, and no high fructose corn syrup. Mustard, it's healthy as long as it contains just mustard seed, water, vinegar, and spices. Stay away from those that contain soybean oil and additives. Mayo, fine as long as it's made the traditional way, with eggs and oil, and ideally not with non-organic canola rapeseed or soybean oil. You can find it made with olive or avocado oil, my favorite kind. Vinegars, take your pick. Apple cider, wine, balsamic, rice. They are all delicious and add a pleasant zing to a dish. Fish sauce. Again, as long as you can pronounce all of the ingredients, this is a great addition to your condiments inventory for Asian cooking. Did you know? Iodized salt was introduced in the mid-1920s to supplement iodine-poor diets that were causing goiters. But today, if you're eating enough real food that is rich in iodine, like fish, shellfish, and seaweed, then you really don't need to get iodine from salt. Conclusion. Up to 90% of Americans are getting enough of the nutrients that are critical for healthy functioning. We are functionally deficient in vitamins, minerals, micronutrients, and fatty acids. We don't suffer noticeably in the short term from scurvy or rickets. However, these insufficiencies damage us decades down the line. We get too little folic acid today and suffer cancer in the future. Or we get too little vitamin D and wind up with osteoporosis someday. These are called long latency deficiency diseases. You won't get rickets, but you can get cancer and die early, and will be more susceptible to infections, depression, fatigue, and muscle weakness if you're insufficient in vitamin D for a long time. Do we really need to take nutritional supplements? No, not as long as we follow a traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyle, eating only wild plants, game, and fish. Live where the air, water, and soil are pure and untouched by pollution. Get lots of physical exercises and direct sunlight. Sleep soundly 9 hours a night and stay untroubled by the stresses and anxieties of modern living. Try this. Toss these. Sugar in all its forms except a little honey or maple syrup. Artificial sweeteners. All-purpose refined white flour. Any packaged food made with high fructose corn syrup. Anything with sugar among the first 5 ingredients on the label. Ingredients must be listed in order of prominence in food. Anything with ingredients that don't sound like food. Example, maltodextrin. Anything made with refined white flour, including pasta, bread, bagels, pretzels, muffins, and so on. Anything made with soybean oil, vegetable oil, or hydrogenated oils.